Hello, I'm Mark Anderson with the Across the Nation news video series, and I'm continuing here on the weekend of September 12, and I'm talking to Vincent Bugliosi, the well-known LA district attorney who once upon a time prosecuted Charles Manson and his gang for the Tate LaBianca murders in the late 60s and early 70s. Thanks for being with me, Vince.
I'm happy to be here.
He's speaking today at the Massachusetts School of Law conference on the prosecution of American war criminals for high crimes and things of that nature. First ever of its kind conference in the recent years. Anyway, he spoke today, including talking about his relatively new book, The Prosecution of George W. Bush for Murder. A very unambiguous title, as he wryly noted during his speech. Particularly striking is the back where it shows Baghdad, one of the ancient cities of the world, burning, which really caught my eye when I first saw this book during a media reform conference in Minneapolis. But what has been the reception so far with this book and the thesis that it has?
I've got better reception from this book than any other true crime book I've ever written. I'm talking about The Man in the Street. I'm talking about letters that people have written to me. I'll just give you one example. There's many more. One fellow wrote to me and said he advertises or sells gourmet coffee on the internet, and he was telling his prospective purchasers, rather than buy his gourmet coffee, buy that book. And I told him, I said, I don't want to feel responsible for you losing all this money. Can't you just recommend that people buy this book? Tremendous response from this book. On the other hand, it's the first book in my career that's been completely blacked out in the media at the beginning. Now, just a little bit here and there. I'm talking about the mainstream media. When it first came out, I couldn't get on network, cable. To this very day, no major newspaper has written a review on this book. It got so bad that ABC Radio refused to take money from my publisher to take out a radio spot on ABC Radio. The audio for the book, an automatic. My agent called me and said, Vince, I can't find anyone who will do the audio for this book in America. The British Broadcasting Company had to do the audio. Right now, as I'm talking to you, there's a documentary for the big screen in production based on this book. The producers couldn't raise any money at all in America. The money had to come in from Canada. I had a very difficult time getting the book published, and as I was telling you, I've had 3 books got up to #1 in the New York Times bestseller list. I've never had trouble getting a book published. This time, very difficult time, finally found a courageous publisher. So there's been a lot of fear surrounding this book right here. And all I'm trying to do is bring George Bush to justice. Here's someone that took this nation to war in Iraq on a lie, under false pretenses, and therefore, under the law, he's guilty of murder for the deaths of over 4,000 young American soldiers in Iraq, fighting his war, not your war or my war or America's war, but his war. And so far, as of this point, no one has done anything at all to George Bush. No impeachment, not even an investigation of him, nothing.
Absolutely fascinating, and yet you have gotten onto the New York Times bestseller list despite the media blackout, which shows the power of the message itself in the book. People are buying the book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Despite this media blackout, so that shows that there's a very compelling message here, as you outlined very well today for the audience here at this Massachusetts School of Law conference to seek the prosecution of George Bush and other war criminals. What's interesting to me is that I wonder why other presidents haven't maybe gotten as low, if you will, as George Bush. In other words, what is it about this war and this president that sets him apart from the many wars we've had in this century, leading up to the 21st century and going into the 21st century? Many of them very bloody, very destructive, more people dying in some cases. Is it not just the false pretenses of the war and the false reports of WMDs in Iraq and the exaggerated or false claims that Saddam Hussein posed a direct threat to the U.S.? Is it also because we're embarking on an undeclared war where Congress really had no responsibility and Bush acted almost unilaterally? Is that it too? That there's no congressional oversight anymore?
Well, I can't get into speculation. But what I can tell you is that I'm not aware of any credible evidence that any president before this fellow George Bush took this nation to war under false pretenses. I'm not aware of any other president in American history who has done that. And if someone were to make the argument, well, Mr. Bugliosi, what about this president? What about this president?
Such as FDR knowing about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, well, that's not taking the nation to war under false pretenses. But most historians don't buy into that. But even if you do buy into it, that's not taking the nation to war under false pretenses. Okay. But my answer to that would be this. Assuming LBJ, Roosevelt, took the nation to war under false pretenses. I don't believe it for a moment. There's no credible evidence. So what? Is Bush's defense, Your Honor, you can't prosecute me for murder because other presidents have done it and gotten by with it? That's not a defense to murder. You follow?
It becomes the other guy did it, why can't I argument.
Yeah. It's like getting a traffic ticket and saying, you know, officer, can't you see on my left and right, they're traveling just as fast as I am. Why are you giving me a ticket? So that even if we were to assume, just for the sake of argument, that other presidents have done what this guy did, it's not a defense. Now, what he did is unprecedented in the annals of American crime. He told one lie after another and taken this nation to war. The big lie, there were two lies. The big lie is when he said that Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country. I have documentary evidence in this book that when he uttered those words, he knew he was not telling the truth. The second lie is when he tried to convince the American public by unmistakable innuendo that Hussein was involved in 9/11. Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. No U.S. federal intelligence agency has connected Hussein with 9/11. Every federal investigation, e.g. the 9/11 Commission, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, they all said there's not a speck of evidence showing any umbilical cord between Hussein and 9/11, and yet this guy, George Bush, tried to convince the American public of that.
Yeah, much like they say that the Department of Justice and the FBI doesn't actually list Osama bin Laden as being wanted for 9/11. Even Osama is not actually technically named for that crime, and he was the other boogeyman that we were told about.